Welcome back. This is K24 this morning. Still going through the news review, third and final part of it. As we come back, we're talking about the presentations being made before the BBI Steering Committee as far as the National Assembly and the Senate is concerned. The Speaker of the House, Muturi, talking about removal of election of presidents and governors by universal suffrage, and that Kenyans should vote for a party that best captures their aspirations. On the other hand, Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen was speaking about the Senate and clearly demarcating the roles between both of the houses. That is a key concern, and also wanted more powers in budget making. We had some of that, of course. Let's take a look at that particular session.
D-Day for the final validation hearings, barely a month after the exercise kicked off. It was time for, among others, the leadership of Parliament. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi insisting that in order to address unhealthy political competition, Kenyans should vote for political parties having submitted the lists of candidates.
The first remedy should be to entrench political competition at the ballot to be amongst political parties as opposed to a competition amongst individuals wearing political party T-shirts.
Muturi, while pushing for removal of constituency boundaries, also underscored the need for the winning party to nominate persons to key executive offices after the general elections.
The party that garners the second highest number of votes in a preceding general election should become the official opposition party, and its leader of that party should assume the role of the leader of official opposition.
On governors, the Speaker wants each party to nominate 3 people qualified to hold office and send the names to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission before the polls.
Within the whole architecture.
Meanwhile, in a match for power led by Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen and his minority counterpart James Orengo, senators asked the 14-member BBI Steering Committee to ensure that their roles are not only well-defined, but also protected.
For the Senate to effectively discharge its mandate under the Constitution, particularly the role of representing the counties and serving the interests of the counties and their governments, it is imperative that the Senate be involved in the budget-making process.
The clamor for presidency, the clamor for every tribe to have a president, is centered around resources. Devolution is the answer to that clamor and thirst for every tribe to have a president.
The Senate also wants powers to approve nominees to offices that have security of tenure. Other groups which also made submissions today included the Mental Health Task Force, which is pushing for the establishment of a Happiness Commission, as well as the declaration of mental health as a national disaster.
This commission would be recognized to be functional because it will prepare annual mental health and happiness report to present it to Parliament. It will also develop guidelines on the delivery of services that ensure mental health and happiness are adhered to.
The BBI task force, which was given a year to submit its proposals to President Uhuru Kenyatta on how to tackle negative ethnicity, corruption, divisive politics, and other challenges facing the nation, has until the end of June to present its report, which is expected to be released in phases.
Some of the proposals made before the steering committee yesterday being covered right there. Ben, I'll come to you with some of the proposals made by the Speaker, talking about removal of elections of the President and governors by universal suffrage. Kenyans should vote for a party that best captures their aspirations. But let's start from there, because when you look at every election, we have different parties, and we've since come to terms with the fact that parties are political vehicles. Once they've delivered Ben to the seat he wants, then there goes the parties to its grave.
In my view, it is a very good proposal and equally dangerous at the same time. Foremost, you realize, especially for the last 2 or 3 general elections, Kenyans have been subjected to a lot of heated campaigns about nothing. And particularly the last 2 general elections, we have seen dangerous cases of people being mobilized specifically around ethnicities and campaigns that have nothing to do with any specific agenda. In fact, you'd be surprised if today you challenged any of the top political party leaders to tell you 5 things that are contained in their manifesto of 2017. They can't tell you, believe you me. And that is how dangerous it is, because we have transited from there was some point whereby really Kenyans were tired, especially in the build-up to the 2002 general elections, where Kenyans were very focused in terms of what they wanted because they knew what they did not want. Now we are in a situation whereby we are all the times people are working around tribal arithmetics to determine what kind of a competent or what kind of a leader they require. And you remember there is a time I gave you an example here whereby today, even in the Nairobi City County, where we have 17 sub-counties and where we have Kenyans from every corner of this republic, it has become impossible even for people generally or genuinely to win elections in certain sections. You go to Embakasi South and you are told huku ni kwa Wakamba. You go to a particular constituency naambiwa huku ni kwa Waluya, like Westlands or some of the areas. You go to another constituency naambiwa huku ni kwa Wakikuyu. And when that actually happens in the capital city, then you realize how low we have sunk as a nation. And in my view, this proposal would really be practical if we had also leaders who are being presented by these political parties matching the kind of credentials that are expected of political parties to elect a president. What we have, and we have seen especially in the last two general elections, is we have seen political parties hawking certificates, nomination certificates to the highest bidder. So that genuinely gives no chance to a legitimate Kenyan out there who has a practical solution, who has proposals that would function. We have seen actually how leadership in many parts of this country has deteriorated, because previously, if you look at especially the composition of parliament in the 80s and even in the 90s, even in the 70s, at least we had credible people. And I remember the other day I was watching a documentary in one of the major TV stations, and you could see in the 1997 elections you had NDP elected leaders or LDP elected leaders from central Kenya, you had KANU leaders from Nyanza, you had, but today it hardly exists. If it is Ukambani, you can only be Wiper and nothing else. If it is in Nyanza, you have to be ODM and nothing else. If it is Western, it may be either ODM or ANC. That has watered down actually what is expected. This proposal by the Speaker would be very practical, but the problem is what would be the mechanism, or what mechanism do we have in place to ensure that also credible individuals are getting nominations to these positions? Right.
Millie, I'll come to you as well when I look at this, because some people are saying in an ideal world, this could probably work. We've seen it work in some countries like South Africa with parties that have a rich legacy and history and a principle in what they stand for, like the ANC. But with where we are right now, how feasible is it, that particular proposal by the Speaker?
I think that Kenya has been on a journey to strengthen political party and political party culture within the country. And I think that this is what emanated in the key articles that we have in the Constitution of 2010 that aim to build a strong political party system and put one in place. Now, if you look at that after the 2010 Constitution, the 2013 nominations, party nominations, was actually a lot more shambolic than the 2017 one, where parties did actually attempt to have some form of party primaries. I'm not saying that they were perfect, I'm not saying they were good, but there was an attempt as compared to 2013, when really there was a lot of chaos. And I say this very informedly, because I actually did sit and listen to quite a number of these issues that were coming from political parties that were trying to conduct their party primaries. Now, the problem that you see in Kenya today is that many people try to run to political parties simply because of the strength of that political party, what it presents, and perhaps taking that against the balance of campaigning individually. Not all do, but many do. And therefore, subsequently, they go against the party principles, the party spirit, and the party has a lot of problem trying to ensure that they control the membership. You see people running to the political parties dispute tribunal every other time after they've been whipped or de-whipped by the various parties in the process of trying to discipline them. And some of the issues that they would raise there would lead you to decide or to see that perhaps their understanding of what the political party expected of them or stands for is quite different. Now, having said that, I think that when we look at Justin Muturi's proposal as the Speaker of the National Assembly, it goes a step further in trying to strengthening this culture of political parties, where then we may get to a situation, as we saw in South Africa, where the political party would be able to recall somebody who is not promoting the ethos, the values, and the principles or the objectives of that particular political party. Right. The beauty, again, is that it also helps us to be able to ensure some kind of balance, because if people like the party, and they have voted for the party, and we are saying that in Kenya, in some regions, once you get a ticket from a certain political party, it's as good as 80% of the race done, because that particular party is popular in that region. So if we have that, it will hold parties more accountable to ensuring that they deliver on the manifestos that they sell, because they will ensure that they put people in place that would be able to sell that. That would be able to support those agendas in Parliament. So that is the beauty of what I see in this. But just before we go, I think that I also liked very much the fact that Murkomen and his team, together with Senator Orengo, came out strongly to support the Senate. That is something we have been crying for since 2010, that this is not the kind of Senate that we envisaged. And I'm glad that they went to BBI to try to propose that, and I hope that the final report that we do see emanating from that will give us the Senate that we want.
Honorable Didimas, let me come to you, because we're looking at it from a scenario where, from the party in which you are, you have clearly stated all is not well. There are lots of issues within the party. There's never been a PG to sort out these issues. The Speaker says that we should have faith in our political parties for them to even choose our leaders from that particular point of view. Do you think this is workable in the state that is right now? If we took Jubilee Party as an example, would we put that particular faith in them to make that particular decision for the people?
First and foremost, Speaker's presentations were personal.
They didn't reflect the views of the National Assembly?
That is not the position of the National Assembly. We never had the Speaker as Kamkunji to canvass. And as much as they are good proposals, they are very ambitious. They are not applicable in a country like ours. They are only applicable in countries with failed democracies like Somalia, or rather very advanced political party democracies like South Africa, the US, and the UK. I say so because as the Speaker of the National Assembly, he ought to have restricted himself into what would strengthen the National Assembly. I like the way the Senate did. The Senate, they came together, the leadership from both parties. You saw Senator Orengo, Murkomen, Mutula Kilonzo Jr., and they canvassed around what should be done to strengthen the Senate. As we are speaking today, the National Assembly needs reforms. It needs reforms on how we can strengthen our oversight role, on how we can strengthen our legislative role, because the legislative role of the National Assembly had been hijacked by the executive. You see what is happening now, where the president will not sign a bill, and he will bring a memo, that will contain a raft of very new proposals. And in such a scenario, is the National Assembly that is required to raise 2/3 majority, to defeat. Failure to defeat, they automatically become the law. So we have simply given the powers to the head of state to be a legislating president. So we really need something that will ensure that the National Assembly is independent, and the National Assembly continues to discharge her roles in oversight and representation. These are things which we need. And you feel that those issues were missing from his presentation to the task force? Absolutely. And the fact that in the new constitution, Kenyans felt that anybody who doesn't want to belong to any political party can still run for office. It means that the majority of the Kenyans have no faith in our political parties. Kenyans never vote for political parties, but they vote for individuals. That's why a party leader of a particular party, even if he ditches that party and moves to a different political party, again, they will win seats. Right. We have people who have won more than, who are in parliament for a third term and fourth term. But every time they are coming in with a different political party. Right? So I think this proposal by the Speaker of the National Assembly, they are very ambitious, and they will even polarize this country further. Right. Especially when you deny Kenyans an opportunity of deciding who becomes who occupies these particular offices, and you are giving that particular position to political parties. Okay. Political parties are never, in this country, are never formed on ideologies, but they are just formed as vehicles to seize power. Maybe this explains why even Jubilee Party is unable to hold even party elections.
Absolutely. Okay, and even as you say that, there's a cartoon that's in the dailies today that we look at right before we get to the Business Daily story. It will be the last story we'll have this morning. You can have that up on screen. There you have it. Anything left inside for me? Some animals more equal than others, and you look at it, a BBI power location. Politicians in there getting most of what is inside, and the big question again is, where is Wanjiko's place in all of this? That captured by Stano right there, just talking about the times as is right now. It's a story that you can get, of course, in your dailies as well. Our last story, even as we get to the tail end of our news reviews, on the front page of the Business Daily, moving away from matters politics and BBI, to the economy. Talo shocks state with 204 billion shilling Turkana oil bill. Ministry of Petroleum rejects Talo's compensation bill, arguing it was excessive and not justified. This it's interesting because even as the ministry rejects this, the National Assembly had called for explanation as to how the money that had come in from the first oil purchase was spent. And the ministry did not want to divulge this, yet here they are now on the receiving end of a very heavy bill on their side, Ben.
You know, Jeff, some of these things are actually extremely depressing, and especially when some of us pointed out to the fraudulent nature of some of the engagements the government got Kenyans into, and eventually it comes to pass. I am on record maintaining that this whole scheme about Talo was a pyramid scheme. It was a scam. If you check the history of Talo as a company, this is a company that has survived all years by lying, especially to international investors, that they have prospected oil or similar findings in countries, especially in developing countries or developing economies, and then they thrive on actually their share prices shooting to the rooftop, collecting as much money as they can, and then they have a very clean exit strategy. And now what we are seeing here is that exit strategy. I am on record insisting that what the president treated Kenyans to in starting to export oil carried on wheelbarrows, because you cannot carry oil from Turkana to Mombasa, a whole 900 kilometers, on tankers, and expect even to fill one tanker sitting in Mombasa that has a capacity of 200,000 metric tons. It will take you like half a year to fill that while you are cutting, while we are destroying our roads, and again, you know, there's something horribly wrong in what has been happening for the last 7 years in the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure and Energy. And we have to agree.
Do you feel that the problem was the player or the viability of the project?
The problem is that entrepreneurs in government, the people who are running ministries, because this whole scheme was designed to be a scam from day zero. And there are people who actually knew this was coming at some day. And there are people who are going to push for the payment of 200 billion shillings because it is money people are going to share, the same way we have cases of fellas who shared money in some island in the United Kingdom. This was actually designed from the outset to defraud Kenyans, to lie to Kenyans that we have sufficient and in fact sustainable oil reserves, pretend to come up with investment infrastructure on the ground, build a few primary schools. It's really hard to look real until now this. Really, because as it stands, Kenyans have lost so far so much in the coming up to this. Up to today, we have refused to implement the LAPSET project that President Mwai Kibaki came up with. That would have seen the development of an oil pipeline all the way from South Sudan to Lamu. What we have is people now, entrepreneurs also provided lorries to start carrying oil. 800 kilometers. Where has that ever happened on earth?
Really, even as you look at this, there's been a lot of secrecy, and you know, this agreement has been shrouded in a lot of secrecy as to what exactly pertained in the details of it. Parliament has tried to get it. That hasn't happened as yet. The press has tried to get it as well. And they said the terms of the agreement are such that even in international practice, some of these things aren't, brought to light. But now here we are with this. How do you go back on this particular scenario? It seems like we're too far down the river.
At one point in Kenya, we were told that choices have consequences. And we have lived to see the consequences of the choices that we made right from 2013. We voted in Jubilee Party with a major majority. We began to learn about the term of tyranny of numbers. If you remember, at one time it was choking this country. And we have seen what was happening then when deals would be made and decisions would be made and nobody could question. And any attempt to question it would be quickly quashed. And that is why we find ourselves in the state that we are in today as a country. I think that the fact that in 2010, when we were developing the current constitution, one of the key things that we thought was important to include in the constitution was participation of the people, because we were tired of coming from the past era where things were determined for us. And that has still sustained, and that is why we continue to find ourselves in these problems. Secrecy in this, we have a Freedom, Access to Information Act. We have that right protected in law, a law that was passed a bit recently. But you find that still you cannot get that information. And that is why we continue to find ourselves in these messes. And I think unless and until we bring in place leaders who will want to govern this country for posterity, we will continue to be shrouded in this. Because unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that anything that emerges today, even the garbage collection we're talking about in Nairobi, everyone sees it as an opportunity to make your killing. And therefore, you must lock out as much people and as much information as possible to ensure that you get the best out of it for yourself.
Honorable Didmas, this also has, the lookings in terms of the executive overpowering the legislature, because some of these things should have been made public, at least to parliamentarians, yet that hasn't been brought forth. How do you wrestle that power and actually play that oversight role and check and balance the executive now, so that we don't have repeats of this in different ministries in different forms?
We must have a team of people who engaged in pre-contract engagement and negotiations on behalf of the government. Right. This team of people needs to be investigated. There is every likelihood that these people, when they went to the negotiating table, instead of advancing the interests of the country, they may have been given some kickbacks. And when you are negotiating for a contract, once you receive some kickbacks, you lose the power for effective negotiations. That's why Kenyans are shocked that the government confirms that it wakes up one morning and the Talo has slapped the government with a bill that shocks it. So these people should be properly investigated. Because if this matter is not properly done, then it will mean that as a country, we will never benefit from this oil, that the proceeds from the oil will go back to paying Talo. Right. So it will appear like we both, Kenya and the Talo owns these oil fields. Right. And this is something that has affected our country, even in these SGRs, even in these very many, contracts that are done by, by donors. We need to get people who will sit on the negotiating table, who will be driven by the interest of the country and not their own personal interest. People who know that whatever they are committing themselves in, they are committing the very many generations of this country, because generations to come will continue to pay this money that Talo has been using to do whatever they've been doing in these oil fields. So it's completely regrettable, and I want to tell Kinoti, I want to tell Bishop Wabukala that their plate is full. They need to move in with the speed and they investigate these people. Their bank accounts should be investigated. Their lifestyle should be investigated, because we have every likelihood that they went to cut deals as opposed to negotiating on behalf of this country. Okay, and that's why we leave it as far as our newspaper review is concerned this morning. But always, we like your views. You can still get us at K24 TV on Instagram. If you want to get us on Facebook or Twitter, you can get us there as well. You can also tweet us if you want on the same discussions, or SMS us on 21222. We take a short break at this particular point in time. Ben Muller, thank you so much for making time this morning.
Asante sana.
Millie Lwanga, welcome back.
Thank you.
After a very long break. And an equally long break, Honorable Didmas Barasa, welcome back as well. I'm looking forward to seeing you plenty more right here on the show. Take a short break, we're back, we get interactive.